Menachem Gold.
Shalom Gold's son.
That's right.
I remember Shalom Gold as my PSA leader.
Wow, he's a flum fire. Okay, so we are.
Okay, so you'll be able to do 1940
on Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara was struggling with a seeming stira in our Mishnah, because our Mishnah at the beginning, our Mishnah sounds like you pay Chati Nezek if a shor tam does damage b'shus hanizik. It's mashma from the beginning of the Mishnah that you pay Chati Nezek, which is like the Rabbana. But towards the end of the Mishnah said V'shar Mazik b'shus hanizik pays Nezek Sholem, which is like a tarfin. So the Gemara said Reisha Rabbanan v'Sefer tarfin. So Shmuel said yes, that's how it is. But the Gemara wanted to offer another teretz, which is right at the top of our Ummah today, and that is as follows: Kula Rab Tarfini. Let's say the whole mission is going according to Rab Tarfin, who holds that a shor tam, that's mazik b'shus hanizik, pays nezek sholem. But Reisha that says you pay chatzi nezek is speaking b'chatzor hamayuchedes lepeiros laechod mehen. The reason why you're chayiv for Shane is because Shane, in fact, it was a chatzor of one person, and you are in the Yishus HaNizik. But Lagabi Karen, it was a chatzor shel shutfin ulazev l'shmar. So therefore, Lagabi Karen, it's not considered b'shus HaNizik. But Lagabi Shane, it was considered b'shus HaNizik, and that's why in the Reish of the Mishnah, the Tam only pays Chati Nezik. Lagabi Shane have a chatzor HaNizik, Lagabi Karen have a reshus harab. Gewaltig. But the second case of the Mishnah is speaking where it was completely reshus hanizik. It was the reshus hanizik exclusively for planting. It was the reshus hanizik exclusively for oxen, and therefore it's in such a case where it's the mazik reshus hanizik, he pays nezik shalom, even though it's a tam. Amar Rav Kahana, Zok Rav Kahana, Amisha l'shmaitze kamed Rav Zvid min Nahardo. I said this story over to Reb Zvid from Nardo, and he told me, I don't like your pshat. I like Shmuel's pshat. Mi matis mukmis law kula krab tarfin. How could you say that the whole Mishnah is going according to Reb Tarfin, and in fact that a shor hatam who's mazik b'shus hanizik pays nezik sholem hakatani? The Mishnah says hashein mu'edes lachel es haroyula. A shein is a mu'ed, and therefore he'll pay damages b'shus hanizik if it's royula. Royula in she'ein royula loy. If an animal eats something that it's not normally going to eat, he doesn't have to pay. But the question is, why wouldn't he have to pay nezek sholem? If he ate something that wasn't royula, well then that's Karen. He's eating it out of anger, right? And if that's the case, it's Karen. And if we're talking b'shus hanizik, it should pay nezek sholem. V'yarav tarfin, ha'amar meshuna Karen b'chatz hanizik nezek sholem is sholem. So how could the Mishnah say dafka shein is muad lechel as a royula? Mashra ein royula, you'd pay chati nezek for Karen. The shein is muad the royula and royula mimonashach. If it's royula, it's shein, and you're mechuyev nezek sholem b'shus hanizik. And if it's ein royula, it's Karen b'shus hanizik, which again is chayiv nezek sholem. So therefore, Zok Reb Zvid, I disagree with saying our Mishnah is going according to Reb Tarfin. The whole Mishnah is the Rabbanan. And if the whole Mishnah is Rabbanan, then we have a problem. Because the second clause in the Mishnah says, V'shara mazik, b'shus hanizik, pays nezek sholem. So how are you going to understand that? The teretz is v'chesura mechsera. We have to amend the Mishnah. This is how we would read the Mishnah. Chamisha tamim hein. There are 5 tamim, and we know what those are: negicha, neshicha, revitza, beita, and negifa. Vimhuadu, and if the animal did one of these 3 things, one of these 5 things, 3 times, then chamishasan muadim, they're all muadim. And now the Mishnah embarks on a whole new Torah. So the 5 tamin and 5 muadim are in fact the same case. the 5 variations of Karen. And now the Mishnah embarks on a new project to tell us something else. V'shein v'regel mu'adin mitchilasim. Shein and regel, the first time they do anything, they're chayiv nezek shalom, because that's dark and chazik. V'heichan ha'adasan, and where do we say they're going to be a mu'ad? B'chatzar ha'nizik, that's b'chatzar ha'nizik, as we know, shein and regel are only mechuyev to pay in Rishus ha'nizik. Matzak of Ravina. Frek Ravina, I don't like your pshat either. Because Akatani L'Kamma, the next parak mentions as follows. In the next parak, the Mishnah says, Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizak Keitz.
One second, Yosy, Mati Arakasha.
Please.
So what did we change in the Mishnah? What's the Chasuri Mechsura?
The Chasuri Mechsura is, the Chasuri Mechsura, let me just go back here. The Im Huadu Chamshasan Muad. That's the Chasur Mechsura. V'im huadu chamshasan muadim. These 5 things, negicha, negifa, neshicha, be'it, and meritza, if the animal did that 3 times, then they'll be a muad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it works. It connects those.
Okay. Mata, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Hill Gemara weiter. Chaim Toilim told me that you're leaving my shir and you're going to Rabbi Gold's shir from now on.
No, I beat him up.
Not at all. Not at all. It was very, very nice.
You made
If
time.
Zok for Rabbi Gold, Toivli Taris Picha, my Alpha Zov. Okay. So let's see where we're holding. So frankly, Matzka for Ravina. Ravina doesn't like this shot either. Because Akatani L'Kamon, in the next parak, which we're going to start Be'ez Hashem tomorrow, it says Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek Keita, meaning it's referring back to the words in our Mishnah that says Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek Keita. So, frankly, Gemara, I Amrit B'Shlama Ariba, if Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek is the case that we're discussing, where it pays Nezek Shalom, which would, of course, be inconsistent with learning that our Mishnah is going according to the Rabbanon, because the way we're learning now, Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek is referring to Shein V'Regel. And they're just telling us where Shein V'Regel is Chayiv Nezek Shalom from day one, that's Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek. But from the fact that the Mishnah in the next parak addresses Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek Ketzad, obviously the Mishnah considers it a whole new subject, a new item that we want to delve into. So Iyamik B'Shlama Ayriba, if that's referring to Karen, that was a Tam that did damage B'Shus HaNizek, and it's going according to a Tarfin who says you pay Nezek Shalom, Mishamachik Getani Ketzad. That would explain why the Mishnah in the next parak want to analyze it. If Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek is not a new category, it's just explaining when you're chayiv for Shein V'Regel, my Ketzad. The question Ketzad, how does this work, doesn't make any sense. Because Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek, according to the way we're learning now, is the Ketzad. It's explaining how is it that you're chayiv Nezek Shalom each time, even the first time for Shein V'Regel, that's when it's Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek. El Amar Ravina, we have to further amend the Mishnah. There are 5 tamen. So that was the Chasur Mechsur of Zera. But now we're going to be adding a lot more. V'shein v'regel mu'adin mitchilason. V'zehu, this is the definition of Shar Hamud. Now, V'zehu Shar Hamud, Rashi says, is going back to the first case. V'imhuadu chamshasan mu'adim v'zehu Shar Hamud. And this is Shar Hamud that we mean, the Negifa, the Neshicha, the Negicha, the Revitza, and the Beita, after it's done 3 times, v'zehu Shar Hamud. Now, getting back to Shein V'Regel, V'shar Mazik B'Shus HaNizek, I'm sorry, my mistake. V'shar Mazik B'Shus HaNizek is going back to Karen. So we're aborting what we said earlier, that Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek is referring to Shein V'Regel. Now it's going back to speak about Karen again. And that's why it makes sense why in the next Mishnah it's at Ketzad. In the next parak it's at Ketzad. But Shara Mazik B'Shus HaNizek, and it's a big Chasur Mechsur, Machloikis Rav Tarfon V'Rabbanon. It would be a Machloikis Rav Tarfon V'Rabbanon. V'yesh mu'adin acher, kayoytze beilu. And then there's a whole other list of mu'adim that you find. Now, if you remember when we learned the Mishnah, Rashi Bavarn, what are these? Why aren't Zei Vari Doi Bar? Why aren't they listed in the Mishnah as one of the Chamishim Muad? With this Chesura Mechsura, it puts everything in place. And Doi Vari was just an add-on, as most of the Mishnah was, to the original halacha of Chamisha Tamin and Chamashim Muad. Now, lest you think that, oi, how can you make such a Chesura Mechsura? That's Mamish reading into the Mishnah something that the Mishnah didn't say. And Dave Zolti's not here, but I'm referring to him. He would say, what do you mean? How can we be missing so much? So the Gemara says, no, I'll bring you a brisa that quotes word for word exactly our Chesur Mechsur. Tani Ameochi, Ramisha Tamanein, Vimhuadu Chamshasan Muadin, Vishain Virad Muadin with Chalasan. Vizeo Sharamud, once when goes back to the Vimhuadu Chamshasan Muadin. Visharamazik, Bishushan Nizik is by Karen, Bishushan Nizik, Tam, who damages Bishushan Nizik, Machlaik Tarfim Verabana. And then there's another list of muadin that we can add to the list. They're muadim itchilason because their derech is to attack. They're carnivores. Their derech is to attack and eat other animals. Period. And that's the end of how we're explaining the Mishnah otherwise. There are those who reached the same conclusion that we just reached, but not because of the struggle of who is our Mishnah like Reb Tarfon and the Rabbanon. They had a Shaila Munebe on the Mishnah, which led them to also suggest that the Mishnah needs to be opened up, extracted. Tanan, Chamisha Taman, I'm always thinking of a zip file. The Chesur Mechsur is like a zip file. You have to unzip the file, and then all of the information comes out. Tanan, Chamisha Taman, but Chamisha Muad. There's many more than that. Vika Za'ev, Hari, Vadoiv, Vanomer, Vavardlis, Vanachash. Umeshani, and the Gemara answers, Amar Avine Chesur Mechsura, Vachi Katani, Chamisha Taman Hein, Vimhuadu Chamshasan Muad, Vishain Virega al Muadin Mitchilason, Vizeo Shor Amud, again going back to the Chamshasan Muadin, Vishar Amazik B'Shusan Nizik, Machlaikis of Tafim Rabbanon, V'yesh Muadin Acherim Kayoytza Be'elu, Hazei Vari, Adoy Vanomer, Vavardlis, Vanachash. Gewaltig. Okay. I want to take a commercial break for a second because I wanted to share such a beautiful word that I heard years ago, but I heard it on Friday with an extra knech. It says all the way to the end of the parsha that Yaakov was sent by his parents to Lavan, Achois Rivka, Aim Yaakov Esau. So Rashi says, like, we know who Lavan was. We don't need to tell us that he was Rivka's brother and then identify who Rivka is by Aim Yaakov Esau. We sort of know that. So Rashi says on that pasuk, Aim Yaakov Esau, Aim Yedea Ma Bozel Lamdeni. I don't know exactly what this is trying to tell us.
The Chaim HaKudosh had the whole shmis, a very big shmis on it, but go ahead.
So I'm going to tell you a joke. That I heard from a paksher. And he said as follows. Yaakov was going to meet his uncle for the very first time. He's going to have something to talk about. He'll need to make some conversation. But he didn't know what his uncle's interests were. Does he like politics? Does he like lomdis? Does he like agadita? Does he like sports? Does he like business? Does he like talking about the hak and yeshivas? What turns him on? What should I discuss with him? So he said, I need to figure out how he operates. Now, I know there's a rule. Roy bonim holchen acher achayein. A woman who has children, usually her children turn out like her brothers. So he said, let me do some reverse engineering. Let me look at the children of her brothers, and through that, with reverse engineering, I'll figure out what he's interested in. And that's why it says, Achosh Rivka, Aim Yaakov Esau. So he was looking at, let's look at Yaakov and Esau and see if we can figure out what Lavan likes. I have a Yaakov here and an Esau here. It's no clear to me who Lavan is. So that's what I heard. I said it over to my son. My son told me that he heard the same word from Reb Moshe Heineman, because Reb Moshe Heineman's Einikel is in yeshiva with him, and he said that Reb Moshe Heineman brought a raya mineu bay from Rashi to the word. What was the raya? Because he says the only idea ma starts from Moshe Heinemann. Ma Balam Bein, Moshe Heinemann is going to come and say Pshat in this Rashi. So that's what I heard over before Shabbos. Okay, Zok Gemara weiter. The Or Chaim Pshat was probably better. Zok Gemara V'loy Lirvotz. Yeah, V'loy Lirvotz. An animal is not a muad to plop down on kalim and break them, to plop down on an animal and kill it. Amar Rabbi Lozer, Lo shonu elapachin gedolim. It's almost the Lablina strikes again, because next week we're going to talk about pachim ktanim. But this week we're talking about pachim gedolim. Lo shonu elapachim gedolim. Okay. Lo shonu elapachim gedolim. We're only talking about big kalim. It's not the derech for animals to be rovets on. That is the derech, and that would fall more under regel. And you'd be mechayev keren, you'd be mechayev this the first time if it was b'shus hanisik. Lema misayale. Let's see if we could bring a raya to Rabbi Lozer. It says in the Brisa, Habe'ema mu'edes lahalach kedarka. A behema is a mu'ed to walk normally, u'lishaber, and to break, u'lamayach es ha'odam ves ha'behema, and to crush a person and a behema, v'yas ha'kelim and kelim. So you seem to have a raya here that there are some type of kelim that it is the derech for the animal to damage. So if Rabbi Lozer said, if our Mishnah says that an animal is not a mu'ud to sit on kelim, and the Brisa says he is a mu'ud to damage kelim, it must be that the Mishnah that says it's not the derech is speaking about big kelim, and the Brisa that says it is the derech is speaking about small kelim. Zakimah, you don't have a raya. Maybe they're both speaking about big kelim. Dil moment that's maybe it's never the derech to stomp on any kelim. When it is a mu'ud for an animal that the Brisa is talking about is that it's walking by something and it smashes into it on the side, but not to stomp on it. So therefore, you don't have a raya from our Brisa. It says a mu'ud. It says leilach kedaku l'shaber. It doesn't say stomp on it. As it's walking, it's crushing things because it's rubbing against them along the side. So you don't have a raya. Ikud Amri, there's another nusach as to how this went down. Amar Rabbi Lozer, loy tema pachin gedoylin, who the lav urche. Don't say dafka pachin gedoylin is the animal not a mu'ud for, because it's not the derech to crush big kelim. Avo pachin ketanim urchu, but pachin ketanim it is derech. Elo afilu pachin ketanim nami lav urchu. So it's exactly the opposite. He's saying that pachin ketanim are just like pachin gedoylin, and it's not the derech. And this time we ask a kasha from the Brisa. Meisei ulamayich es ha'adam es ha'be'ema es ha'kelim. And Amar Rabbi Lozer dil moment atzad. So that was a different way to approach it. The same conclusion. The question is, what position are we starting with, and what position are we ending with? Ika de Ramila Nirma. There are those who ask a kasha. Minei obey. Tanan v'loy lirvitz. It says v'loy lirvitz in our Mishnah. I'm sorry, not Minei obey. Asks a stira. V'loy lirvitz. It says v'loy in our Mishnah. V'tanyu l'mayach es adam es habem es hakelim. Amar v'lozer l'kasha Kamma pachim gedolim Kamma pachim ketanim. So the Gemara is giving over the information, exactly the same information, in three different ways. But either way, we arrived at the same conclusion that we don't know if there's a place to be mechalik between pachim gedolim and pachim ketanim. We might have to make a distinction between stamping on it and crushing it that way, or brushing up against it and smashing it from the side. So therefore, the Gemara remains inconclusive. Hazeva Ari. We go through a list of chayos who are mu'odim mitchilos. One of the animals mentioned was a bardalis. And I asked the Olam what a bardalis was. So Chaim said it could be part of the cat family. It's not. So the Gemara is going to tell us exactly what a bardalis is. And by the time we finish this Gemara, we're going to have no clue what bardalis is. I'm Rav Yehuda.
The article says, this is a weasel or the cheetah.
Okay. I'm Rav Yehuda. Usually a weasel is a cheater. Omar, my brother, I'm Rav Yehuda. Nifriza, it's a nifriza. My nifriza. I'm Rabbi Yosef, appa, it's an appa. How could you say that a bardalis is an appa? Reb Meir added on a list, one more to the list in our Mishnah. Reb Meir appa tzavua, and Reb Elazar appa nachash. So Reb Meir said, in addition to Bartlis and all the other chayes in the Mishnah, there's also a chayah called tzavua. The problem is, Reb Yosef tzavua apple. So if apple is a Bartlis, how could Reb Meir be adding on another animal, which is tzavua, which is just another name for Bartlis? He's just adding the same animal again. So how could you say that apple is a Bartlis? It's possible that a tzavua zocher is an appa, and it's possible that a tzvu nekeva is not an appa. And maybe Reb Meir was talking about, a nekeva. Rashi explains. Look, Kasha. The Bartlis the Mesnizinu tzavua zocher. It's a male tzavua. The olav ka'amar Rabbi Yosef tzavua zu appa. Rabbi Yosef was referring to a male Bartlis, and that's where he said tzavua is an apple. For Meir Moisef af tzavua nekeva the loish me'apple. So going back here, when Rabbi Yosef said tzavua zu apple, he wasn't referring about a female tzavua. He was referring about a male tzavua. But the female tabua is who Rabbi Meir was talking. So it's not a steam anymore.
1 second, but what about Rabbi Lozer who says af nochosh? The Mishnah.
What's wrong with Rabbi Lozer?
Because it says nochosh in the Mishnah. If that Brisa can't, how do you know that this is talking about the same list?
Rabbi Lozer says af nochosh, even if it cannot be
He's adding.
But the Gemara is going to delve into Rabbi Lozer. You're asking a very good point on Rabbi Lozer. The Gemara is going to finish with Bartlis, and then the Gemara is going to get into Rabbi Lozer. So we'll get there in a minute. That will be definitely handled. Zok to Gemara. The Tanya we learned, Tzavua Zachar is a very bad animal. La'achar Sheva Shanim, after 7 years, Nasa Atlif, it becomes a bat. I think Atlif is a bat. Atlif, the Mashal says it's a flying mouse, so I'm assuming it's a bat. We have to be matzker the Mashal today, because today was the Mashal Zertzah. So the Mashal says Atlif is a bat. Atlif La'achar Sheva Shanim, Nasa Arpod, it becomes also a very bad animal. It's a very bad poisonous animal. And Arpod La'achar Zayin Shanim, Nasa Kimush, that's a plant. It's also a very bad plant. And Kimush La'achar Sheva Shanim, Nasa Chuch. And Chuch La'achar Sheva Shanim, Nasa Shade. So this is from the very bad type of items, and the Mashal says it constantly reincarnates into something that's even worse until it becomes the ultimate of evil. It becomes a shade.
You think this is where Yosy? This is where the Gemara gets the world gets the idea. Bat becomes a vampire.
Oh, could be like a shade. Very good. Outcome from the Gemara. So I wanted to point out, this is really what someone might consider spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation was a theory that things just spontaneously show out of nothing. For instance, you take rotten food, it automatically creates magically. It creates what are those little white bugs called again?
Maggots.
Maggots. It produces maggots. So how did science disprove spontaneous generation? They took 2 containers of rotten food. One they put a screen over it, and one they left open. The one that was open developed maggots. The one with the screen didn't. So that disproved spontaneous generation, because you see clearly it didn't. It must have came from the outside, because the one with the screen didn't get maggots. So sometimes we have Gemaras like this that does talk about spontaneous generation. We're going to learn about Shidduch Shalom in a minute. That's spontaneous generation. So I asked him, Shmuel Kamenetsky, didn't science already disprove spontaneous generation? So he told me it did, with maggots in the container. But there's so many other things that maybe it still applies to. If you take a spine and you watch it for 7 years and it doesn't turn into a snake, then you can disprove this Gemara. But the Gemara, the science only disproved spontaneous generation on the species that they in fact test. That's what Shmuel told me. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Shidrish Alodam, the spine of a person, it becomes a snake after 7 years. Not everybody's back. That's only if he didn't bow down by Moed. Before I address this, I want to learn Tosfos, because Tosfos asks, it's a little bit of a severe punishment because someone didn't bow down by Moedim. he turns into a snake. So I want to wait to learn Tosfos before we talk about this some
Okay,
more.
this is while he's alive, Yossi?
No, after he's dead, 7 years after he dies, his back turns into a snake.
Look in the Bani Chananel, before the last trickle, Yerushalmi it staat. Shalom b'Shabbos Barik Aleph, Rabbi Yosy bar Boin, Shem Reb Zvid, 8 l'Sheva, 107 years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu machlef v'luma. V'moichoy de Reishe, V'sabbat Akro. The Maya Samam. Telas, the Sissim,
All the different part of his body become different things.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see the Gemara. Amar Mar. Reb Meir Omer Afat Tzavu. Reb Meir added Tzavua to the list. So let's turn on Talmud base.
Because they just turn on the whole, there's a speaker right here.
Okay, Zok to Gemara. Rabbi Lazar Omer Afanoch. Rabbi Lazar holds the Nachash as well. Freit the Gemara, V'anan Tnan, Rabbi Lazar Omer, Bizman Shen B'dei Tarbos Einamu Adam, V'nachash Mud Lo'elam. So I think that's what Shlomi raised. Zok to Gemara, Tony Nachash. So instead of Rabbi Lazar saying Af HaNachash, it's plain Nachash. And therefore, it's not Af HaNachash that is just like the rest of them. That also, if they could be tamed, rather you're just saying Nachash is on the list, but Avada Nachash cannot be tamed. Let's see Rashi Af HaNachash, B'diktani Af, Mechlal der Rabbi Lazar, have a Nich Mu'adam. He holds her Al Mu'adam. So tomorrow, no, Nachash is a Mu'ad. Okay, gewaltig.
So what he's saying is that it's only the Nachash, not
It's only the Nachash that's always a Mu'ad.
as opposed to the other 5 items that they're listed there.
Correct. They could be B'dei Tarbos. Okay, so up to Gemara. Amar Shmuel. Okay, now let's stop here a second because we wanted to learn Tosfos. Who the Lekar b'Moedim. So let's look at Tosfos. Why is it such a big deal, Moedim? Zok Tosfos. Lefi shemitzvah lechraya. It's a mitzvah to bow down. V'chizakif, and when you stand up, zakif kechavia. So I think when you bend down by Moedim, you bend down all the way, and then you bring your head up first, and then you stand up. So you stand up like almost like a cobra. It lifts its head up and then goes up. Mida keneged mida, v'nasa nochash. So why is a mida keneged mida? Because you were supposed to bow down and then stand up like a nachash, and you didn't. So therefore, it's a gnai that a person should become a nachash. Gilyon. The yesh mefarshim mishum darminim b'medrash. It says in the medrash, sheyesh etzem b'shidroi shalodom. There's one bone in the spine of a person. Shemimenu noitzar la'asad lavai. That's how he's going to be recreated la'asad lavai. I think it's called the luz bone. In la'asad lavai, we're all going to be luzers.
Now strikes against
What?
Gives sustenance to that bone.
That's right. Malav malka. That's right. Okay. And if you eat malav malka, then you're a loser. You're a loser because you're nourishing your luz bone. It's such a strong bone, and it's not even combustible. If it's going to turn into a snake, so now Tosfos is saying is he's upping the ante. Not only does the person's spine turn into a snake if he doesn't bow down by Moedim, he's not going to be like that's off the charts. It's not mistaber to say that because not bound by Moedim, you shouldn't stand up. So there's a lot of Torah on why not bowing down by Moedim makes this happen. But the gist of it is that Klal Yisrael has to have a Koros HaToiv. And Moedim is a Koros HaToiv. We know every other bracha, when the Chazan says it, we answer Amen. By Moedim, there's something called Moedim D'Rabbanan. When it comes to thanking somebody, you can't just say Amen. You can't say Ich Mamaskim Tzayim. you have to personally thank your Moishlam. And I guess if you don't thank your Moishlam, it's a big problem. You
said you want to learn Mashu. This is nice Mashu on this.
Right, a lot of Mashu. Hopefully we have time. I'd like to learn the Mashu if we have time. Zok to Gemara. Zok to Gemara. Let me see where I'm up to.
The third line.
Well, non-timer below some non shame they tarbos. Animal Adam, Vanachash Mud. Adam Zakmar Tali Nachash. Amar Shmuel. Ari B'Shus Harabim. If a lion in Rishus Harabim Doras v'Ochal. Now the definition of Derisa Rashi says is the lion eats his prey alive. He doesn't wait till it dies. Eats it alive right there on the spot. If he does it in Rishus Harabim, Potter, he's Potter. Why is he Potter? Because to a lion that's shame. He's eating derech achilosoi, and derech achilosoi is shame, and shame is only mechuyev in Rishus HaNizek. So therefore, if an Ari committed shame in Rishus Harabim, Avad will be Potter. But Torach v'achal, Torach means he lets it die, and after it dies, then he eats it. That's not the derech for an Ari to eat. So that is already Karen, that's Rishonah. Therefore, Chayiv, he'll be Chayiv Chatzi Nezek in Rishus Harabim. Daras v'achal Potter, keeping the Urchel Medris, Havalei, K'mesha Achla Peres Firakos. The Havalei Shein Rishus Harabim Potter. And an animal doing drisa, a lion doing drisa is like a cow eating vegetables. In Rishus HaYachid, it's Chayiv. In Rishus Harabim, it's Potter. But Torah is Lav Urchel. It's not the derech for a lion to be Torah. Lav Urchel. And therefore, in Rishus Harabim, he'll pay Chatzi Nezek because it's Keren. Correct Gemara, remember the treifa lav urcheu. Are you telling me that lions don't do treifa? They'll never kill an animal, wait till it dies, and then eat it? Vaksiv, it says in the pasuk, Aryeh Toireif Bade Guroisov. This is a very fascinating Bidei Guroisov. This is an interesting pasuk in Nachum. It talks about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to destroy the tormentors of Klal Yisrael, and it describes how mighty they were that Hashem is going to take down. So one of the descriptions that the Navi gives about how mighty they were is Aryeh Toireif B'dei Geroisov. This is a lion who tears up animals to bring for his children to eat. But whatever the case is, you see from the pasuk that it's a derech for an Ari to be Toiref. The Gemara sure b'shvil Geroisov. When he's eating his own meal, he's going to eat it live. But when he's attacking an animal to kill, to bring home to his children, that will be a treifa. And that is the derech. It says in the pasuk vayter umechanek lilavoisov. It chokes and kills animals for the females. So Kamar b'shvilavoisov. Again, if he's doing it, if he's killing an animal to bring home to his wife, he'll also do treifa. Now I have a little question. Like what I learned in science, it's the female lions who do the hunting. The male lions don't do hunting. Did anybody ever learn that in National Geographic?
Yes, 100%. They just sit around waiting for the food to be served.
That's right.
Just like us.
So could be right. So could be what it means is just like us. They send their wives. They supervise the attack. They're like the Hamas guys who are sitting in hotels in Qatar supervising the attack. So what does it mean? We go and attack and prepare animals for our children. It means we send our wives out. Oh, it's a man's world. Okay, so to Gemara.
It's also verstanden, ja, te wohnen. An de Menschen, die geworden
Ich meine das nicht. Ich meine das nicht.
De Leid mocht geworden nicht.
Okay.
Sie hat mich schickt die Werbe zu der Arbeit und die Männer sitzen daheim.
Okay. So to Gemara. Vimale teref chayrov. The lions fill their whole den with food. They load the refrigerator. So tomorrow again, bishvil chayrov, and it says in Moinois of treifa, his den is full of treifa. Again, bishvil Moinois. So the Gemara maintains that when a lion eats for himself, he'll do drisa, but when he's capturing on behalf of his family, then he's going to do treifa, and their treifa would be normal.
So why isn't it considered urche in both cases?
Say that again.
So it's urche in both ways.
That's right. The treifa for his children is urche. Shmuel obviously talking about treifa for himself, and that's not urchi. But your kasha is a very good kasha. The Gemara is going to ask it soon. Not exactly the way you asked it, a little bit differently. Frank the Gemara about Tanya, we have a brisa that's inconsistent with Shmuel. It says v'chein chaya shenichnaso lechatzar hanizik, a chaya that went into the chatzar hanizik, tarfa behema v'achla basar, which we know is shaloi kederech, mishalach bezek shaloi. According to Shmuel, how do you pay nezek shaloi? This is Karen, and it's b'shus hanizik. Why is it paying nezek shaloi? It's Karen. Dr. Gemara, it was shame. It was shame. You know what it did? It tore it up because it was going to leave it later. So therefore, that is the derech. Correct the Gemara, but what do you mean? Ha'achla katani. The Brisa says tarfa b'me ve'achla. So Gemara, yeah, it was tarfa l'aniach, and therefore it was derech, and therefore it's chayv nezek shalom. But this, why did it eat? The lion was terrific, and then he said, I was going to take it home. And he said, you know what? I'm thinking it over. I'm a little bit hungry now. I think I'm going to have it eat now. Frank the Gemara, Mina Yadina, how in the world are you going to know what the lion is thinking? The lion ripped the animal up and started eating it, and you're going to say that the lion was thinking to be terrific for himself, which was shaloi kederech, and then I'm sorry, terrific for to bring home, which was kederech. He changed his mind. And here's when the Gemara asks Mati's question: if you're going to suggest that when an animal does treifa, maybe it was kederech because he was tarfel aniach and he changed his mind. So how does Shmuel know? Shmuel said if an animal does treifa, b'shus harabim, it's not kederech, and therefore since it's not kederech, he pays Karen. Who said? Maybe he's potter. Maybe he was tarfel aniach. Maybe when he originally was tarfit, it was shein b'shus harabim, and it should be potter, and he changed his mind. So how could Shmuel be mechayiv the treifa b'shus harabim? So because of that, the Gemara does not like the svar at all. How are you supposed to know what an animal's thinking? So the Gemara, the Brisa you read, so let's look back at the Brisa. Tanya, the Brisa says, and it was tarfa l'aniach. Tarfal aniach is shame. That's the derech. Oi behem of achla, or it did drisa right away. So those are both cases that are the derech for an ari, and that's why the Brisa says in either case mishalom ezek shalom. So that's how Rav Nachman Yitzchak wanted to explain these words.
The first Brisa talked about an ari specifically. The second one.
Shmuel. The first is not a Brisa. It's Shmuel.
A Shmuel, and the second one talks about a chaya stam. We don't know.
Oh, so you're asking me a very good kasha. How do you know the chaya that we're discussing is an ari? Maybe it's a zeif. Maybe it's a different animal. So Toysus discusses that. So let's go to the two dots, and then we'll take a peek in Toysus. Zok to Gemara, Ravina Amar. Ravina had a different shot. Kiko Amar Shmuel Bari Tarbus. Shmuel is speaking by an ari that's well trained. V'aliva de Rabbi Lazar, the Amar Lav, and according to Rabbi Lazar and our Mishnah, who told us that a trained ari, nothing that he does is derech. Therefore, everything that he does is shaloi kederech, and therefore everything that he does he should be mechuyev for in Rishus Harabim. Frank the Gemara, but the Shmuel doesn't say that. Shmuel said that if the animal did drisa, he's potter because that's like Shane Rishus Harabim. But if it's speaking where the animal was domesticated, was trained, then even drisa is not typical of an animal that's trained. So Hakam Shmuel said that drisa is part of Rishus Harabim. Ella the Ravina lava Shmuel. Ravina wasn't talking about Shmuel. Ella masnisa, kitani masnisa. The Brisa that says v'chein chayish nichnu l'chatzar nizik tarfa be'ema v'achla basar v'shalom mezek shalom. That's going by an Ari Tarbus. Frek Gemara, Ihachi Chati Nezek Boy L'Shlume. Why does the Brisa say Mishalom Nezek Shalom? This is a Karen, because this is a trained animal. It's not the derech for it to attack other animals. Zok to Gemara, you're right. The ayayit, it's speaking the third time. The case of the Brisa that says you pay Nezek Shalom is attack a tamed animal, but 3 times it acted out and did this, and therefore it's a mood never pays Nezek Shalom. Frek the Gemara, Ihachi, my high, the Katani law, got to be told to the shame. This Brisa is listed when it's discussing shame. And it says not only is Shane Chayiv eating in Rishus HaYachid, V'chein Chaya, Shenichsa L'Chotin is also Chayiv. But the way we're describing the Brisa now, the Brisa is not even discussing an incident of shame, it's discussing an incident of Karen. Gabak told to the Karen, boy the Messiah. The Gemara Kasha, that will have to blind it. But now let's look at Tosfos, who asks Shlomi's Kasha. V'tanya V'chein Chaya. This was the Kasha that was asked on Shmuel from the Brisa. That it had the case of Chaya that shows, in fact, that Treifa is the derech. Tema frek Tosfos. V'lukma beza'ev. Why don't we say that the Brisa is not speaking about a lion that Shmuel is discussing? It's speaking about a wolf, the orcha the treif, because the wolf it is the derech for it to do Treifa. V'yeshloim zok Tosfos the Chaya stam katani bein bari bein beza'ev. Since the Brisa does not mention what it was, which Shlomi pointed out, it just says Tam Chaya, it means this has to apply equally to all Chayas. Frek Tosfos is another kasha. Why don't you say the reason why you pay Nezek Shalom is because it is Karen B'Shus HaNizik? The Tosfos will have a motive, L'Shnuyei D'Cherevi Tarvin Notzio, Dama Mishul the Karen B'Chatzar Nizik Nezek Shalom M'Shalem, Midikatani Lo Gabi told to the Shen Kedemasik, because of the same reason the Gemara said later, and that is when you talk about told to the Shen, it's not logical to say that we're speaking about a case of Karen. Okay, Gavaltic. So at the end of the day, the summary of this Gemara is Shmuel holds that the lion's method of killing is, if he's eating it for himself, it's going to be drisa, and if he's killing the animal to feed anybody else or for his den, then the method of choice is treifa, and therefore anything that's the derech to do will be chayiv nezek shalom in Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaNizik, and anything that's derech to do that's done in Rishus HaRabim is potter and ganzen, and if it's not the derech to do, then you're chayiv in Rishus HaRabim nezek shalom, chatzi nezek the first couple of times, and then nezek shalom. Okay, Gavaltik. Zok Gemara weiter. Ma bein tam lamud. We had this Mishnah before in the sugya of chatzi nezek mammon or knosa. The Gemara asked, there's other differences, and the Gemara said, Tana v'shayir. So let's see this Mishnah. Ma bein tam lamud. What is the difference in halacha between a tam and a mu'ud? Zok to Gemara, Elo shatam mishalom chati nezek migufoy. The tam is chati nezek, and his liability, the owner's liability, is limited to the value of the animal that did the damage. Umu'ud mishalom nezek sholem in an aliyah. The mu'ud has to pay full pop, even if the damage is worth a lot more than the worth of the animal. He has to take the money out of the bank. He's got to pay. Zok to Gemara, Maya aliyah. What does aliyah mean? So I touched aliyah according to the Maskana of the Gemara, but we're going to have a havamina here before we settle on our Maskana. Amar Belazar b'ma'ula shebinachas. He has to pay back with the best of properties that he has. It says, "Vayishkav Chizkiyahu im avoisov." When Chizkiyahu Melech was nifter, vayikberuhu b'mayla kivrei b'nei David. They buried him in the best of the kivrei b'nei David. Amar Belazar b'mayla. What does b'mayla mean? Eitzel me'ulam shebemishpacha. He was buried near the most prestigious members of the royal family. Umaninu David u'Shlomo. He was buried near David and Shlomo. Vayikberu b'kfaroisa asher karaloi be'er David, and they buried him in the kvarim that they dug from near David. V'yeshkiveu b'mishkav, and they buried him in a bed asher molei b'samim v'zanim, that was full of sweet smelling spices. I apologize. Vayikbereyu b'kfaroisa is no longer talking about Chizkiyahu Melech. Now it's talking about Asa Melech Yehuda. It's speaking about a different king. And the pasuk says he was buried in Besamim. My Besamim Besamim. Rabbi Elazar Zini Zini, which I believe is Mine Besamim Harbe, many different spices. Rabbi Shmuel Nachmani Amar Besamim Shekol Amariach Ben Bolade Zima. It's a type of perfume that smells so good that it could lead to znus. Victor, do you know what the word of someone who's mezana with a corpse? There's a specific word for it. Necrotism or something?
Necrophilia.
What?
Necrophilia.
So I don't think that that's what this means. Bolade Zima with the mace. I think it just means Bolade Zima. I don't think it means that. Zok to Gemara. Yirmiyahu was very, very upset at his people. And he said about them, Hikaru Shucha Lilachteni. They dug a pit to capture me. I just want to make sure I'm reading the word right. Kar Shucha. Yeah, it's a shin. Yeah, they dug a pit to capture me. He was complaining about his generation. Upachim tamnu l'raglai. And obstacles they buried for my feet. But Rabbi Elazar Omer, what did they do? Shechashtu mizayna. They were chayshit that he had relations with the zayna. What's wrong if he has relations with the zayna? Zokt Toisvis, he was a kohen, and the kohen is not allowed to marry a zayna. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar shechashtu me'eshes. They were chayshit him that he was mezana with an eshes. I understand. Where do you see that the word shucha is associated with a zayna? It says kishucha amuka zayna. A zayna is like a deep hole. My shucha. Where do you see such a nusach of shucha l'gabe neshes? Zok to Gemara. Atu eshes mi nafka michal zayna. And eshes whose mezana also has a psul of zayna. So we can use the word shucha zayna. Dr. Mar Bishlam Lamandam Shechashtu Me'eshes Hani Dechsiv Va'ata Hashem Yudata. It's called Atzasam Alai Lamus. If they're chayshim for eshes, the chiyuv for a kohen who's mezana with an eshes is misa. So that's why he could accuse them that they wanted to kill him. El Lamandam Shechashtu Mizayna. That's an Israel. They wouldn't kill him for that. So my Lamus, what do you mean that they were planning to kill me? Zok to Gemara, it was a whole different thing. They actually physically threw him into a bar. Sheshlichula be'er tit. They threw him into a be'er of tit. Does that mean a quicksand, a patch of quicksand? How does he attach be'er tit to Yard Scroll?
A pit of mire.
What is mire? Like not Meyer Tenenbaum.
No.
That would be a good place to be.
Mire. I have to look it up.
Okay, whatever it is, it's a place where you don't get out of alive. Dorish Rava, my dechsiv, Yirmiyahu.
Meyer Schmutz.
What's that?
Swampy, boggy ground.
Schmutz.
A bog. You've been like when they say the truck became mired down.
So like bad, thick mud. Okay,
Sounds
talking
like
about Dorish Rava.
like quicksand. Sounds good.
My dechsiv, it says in the pasuk, and here's Yirmiyahu lashing back out at Klal Yisrael for being so bad to him, and he cursed them. And he said, "You muchshalim lefanecha, Klal Yisrael should be nichshal in front of you, be'esapecha, when you're angry, asay b'hem." What was this klala? Amar Yirmiyahu lefnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, afilu b'shah she'oishin tzedakah, even where Klal Yisrael are doing tzedakah, hechshilam, make them be nichshal, b'vnei adam she'einam mehuganim, that they should end up giving tzedakah to people who aren't royu to receive tzedakah, kidei shelo yikabel schar, so they shouldn't get schar. Now the Rishonim speak out, the Mashal speaks out, avada, if a person gives tzedakah with an open heart and he's giving it with the right kavanah, avada gets full schar, even if the person he gave it to was a ganav. There's no issue whatsoever. But there's an extra shmira el yoina that comes with giving tzedakah, and that only applies to those who give it to a person who's an ani hagud. So Yirmiyah asked, at least they shouldn't get that extra protection. They wanted to kill me, take away their extra protection. So instead of going weiter, we still have 2 minutes. I can't even look at the Marsha because I'm online. I don't have a copy of a Marsha. But the Marsha speaks a little bit about the backbone. I believe he speaks about this as well. But I think that's what he says. That there's an extra shmir el yoina that you get when you give tzedakah to a proper oni, and that idaven they shouldn't have. But avada they would get the schar. Okay, so let's just do a little line in the Gemara. The chavod alsulay b'moisoi. They did a great covet to Chizkiyahu Melech when he died. Malamed, what's the greatest covet? Shoishivu yeshiva al kvarei. They built a yeshiva on this kever. Pligi bar Rab Nosson v'Rabbanon. There's a machlokes between Rab Nosson and Rabbanon. What was this? How long it was there? And if we look at Tosus, we see why they did it. L'vishahir b'Torah b'Yisrael. Chizkiyahu Melech created a lot of Torah in Klal Yisrael. And it says in Sanhedrin that in his days they checked from Don to Beersheba. Every member of Klal Yisrael even knew the details of Hilchos Tumah v'Tahira. Then Tosfos adds, of course, not mamish on this kever. It had to be 4 amos away because otherwise it would be loig l'rosh. If you're learning loig l'rosh, if you're learning while he can no longer do mitzvahs. So one says the yeshiva was only there for 3 days. Let's just turn over onto Yudayim and Aleph. So one says he was only there for 3 days. The Chadam or Shiva, one said for 7 days. And there are those who say it was 30 days. Okay, we'll stop here. And Ben Hashem will learn tomorrow at 7 and at 9 again.
Yeshua Yosy, could you make me host?
Avada.
Okay.
I got so lost. I don't even know why we're going. Why?